The Pittsburgh Penguins have made a shocking trade, and this has serious implications on the team moving forward. But not only that, they've made multiple other huge moves that we're going to break down in this episode of Penguins Digest. We have comments from the draft picks they've made. We have comments from the Penguins staff as to why they made some of the decisions that they made this weekend. And finally, there is some clarity for Penguins fans on the weekend. That was the NHL entry draft. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Pittsburgh Penguins, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, and you get to stay up to date again with everything that has to do with the Pittsburgh Penguins. But let's dive right into it. They made a pretty shocking trade in the middle of the draft, and that was the Pittsburgh Penguins have acquired Connor Clifton and a second round pick, which we'll get to in just a little bit, because this is a very interesting one to me, because obviously they ended up using it, and I think the player that they got will be a very good player. And obviously giving away or trading away, I should say, Connor Timmins as well as Isaac Belvo. And this is an interesting one for the Pittsburgh Penguins because you get a very solid right-handed defenseman in Connor Clifton. And Connor Timmins, I mean, he could put up points here and there, but he's not as solid as a defenseman as Connor Clifton. I think it's just a very interesting move. And Penn's Inside Scoop went on to say that Clifton actually had a very memorable NHL debut, dropping the gloves with Penguins assistant general manager Jason Spezza, which I think is very interesting. You can see the full breakdown here, and it's Isaac Belliveau, excuse me, I believe it's Belliveau. I'm not sure how I pronounce it at first, but you can see the full breakdown here. It's Connor Clifton, who's in year 3 of 3, is going into the last year of his contract, $33 million, excuse me, and the 2025 second round draft pick that they did end up using. Again, we'll get to that player in a second. And in return, the Buffalo Sabres get an unsigned RFA Connor Timmins, Isaac Belliveau, who is in his third year of a 3-year entry-level contract as well. So an interesting trade. In Connor Clifton, you get a guy who's a little bit more offensively minded than defensively minded. He's a little bit older. You know, he's 29. He's going to be 30 years old. He's a depth defenseman option, probably going to play, you know, third pairing, maybe even second pairing on this team, really depending on how the lineup shakes up. It's going to be a third pairing, obviously, with Letang and Karlsson ahead of him. We don't know what's happening with Karlsson at this point in time, so maybe he would be a second pairing defenseman, but nonetheless, he's on an expiring contract who throws a bunch of hits. This is the type of guy playoff teams are looking for at the trade deadline, so if the Penguins don't want to hang on to him, they can get some more assets for him at the trade deadline. So not a bad trade at all, but what a lot of people are talking about, like Dan is saying here, A+ asset management from Kyle Dubas as he turned a 5th round pick into Connor Dewar, Connor Clifton, and a second rounder who turned into Peyton Kittles, who plays for Swift Current in the WHL. And of course, out the door, I mean, we have to talk about it right before we move on to Peyton Kittles. Connor Timmins is a 26-year-old right-handed defenseman who had 7 points in 17 games with the Penguins last year. Belliveau is also 22 years old, and, you know, it's a pretty interesting trade, but I think the Penguins made out quite all right with this trade in particular. And when you look at Peyton Kittles, pretty interesting player here for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's still only 17 years old, and he's another right shot, large, by the way, right shot defenseman. He's 6'5" already at 17 years old. He's 190 pounds, and he plays in the WHL for Swift Current. Like I mentioned, he put up 14 points in 53 games. Not the most offensively minded defenseman, but that's okay. That's all right. He's a big right shot defenseman, and you could use that if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, in a couple of years. And not only that, other teams can use that too. So maybe he's a trade chip in the future, but of course you never want to look at prospects that way. This guy's going to slide in seamlessly into the Penguins prospect pool. And I think this is another really good move. And you can see here from Jesse, he doesn't like Kittles as much as other players in that range. But here's the thing. He was playing 25 minutes a night on average as a 17-year-old last year. And that's basically like seeing a Sasquatch. Players who are 17 do not play that much in the WHL or the CHL for that matter. He played in every situation, including as a forward on the power play for Swift Current. This guy's a very versatile player, and I think Penguins fans should absolutely love this move. So I think this is actually, for as many questionable moves that Kyle Dubas made this week, and especially with the selections in the first round, this move specifically, tidy work from Kyle Dubas, I have to say. I mean, when you look at the trade itself, you're getting a depth defenseman who can slot in seamlessly on this team immediately and play for the Pittsburgh Penguins. If it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you can absolutely trade a player with his skill set for assets at the trade deadline, because contenders will want that. You're trading away Connor Timmins, who probably wasn't long for this team anyway. And in doing so, you get, obviously, Peyton Kittles, who looks like he's going to be an absolute stud on the back end for the Pittsburgh Penguins in, we don't know when, but the fact that he's playing 25 minutes a night and playing literally different positions and in every situation as a 17-year-old, it's unheard of and really good. It's fantastic. So you can see here from Elite Prospects, when Swift Current needed to close out games, Kittles didn't leave the ice. With immense defensive range, a physical edge, and nuanced shutdown game, it's easy to see why. A defensive stalwart with room to grow, he routinely shuts down the opposition's best. And if he's routinely shutting down the opposition's best at 17 years old, he's only going to flourish more so into that role as time goes on. So I really, really like this move. And speaking of other moves, there were some questionable moves over the course of this weekend. And I wanted to get into some interesting quotes from Wes Clark, who is now in charge of the Penguins scouting and obviously drafting. And he came over from the Toronto Maple Leafs and worked very closely with Kyle Dubas when they were together in Toronto. And he had some comments as to why they went on to select some of the players that they did last night. And obviously with their first selection in the first round last night, they selected Ben Kindle, as we all know, and it was an uncharacteristic pick. I mean, way off the board for what analysts were saying. And he went on to say an extreme characteristic of him is intelligence. His hockey sense relative to his class is elite. He had 99 points in the WHL last season, understands the game at a super high level. Just big belief in Ben in terms of the upside, and he influences the game on both sides of the puck. We think the upside is sky high, and we'll do our best to help him improve in the areas he needs to improve in, and we'll see where it goes. So obviously drafting for high potential on that one. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how that turns out. And obviously when talking about Bill Zanon, who was, obviously drafted with the next pick in the first round, and this is what Wes Clark had to say about him, has a high work rate, which is something we highlighted in our video yesterday, Mark and I, when we were talking about all three selections. Highly competitive, played center this year, has played the wing in the past, tremendous athletic upside. Got to know him a little bit there in Buffalo at the combine. You see the look in his eyes. He's got that dog mindset. So the type of kid that helps you win hockey games. So obviously this is the type of pick, and we were talking about it as well, that helps. He's not going to be a top line wing or top line center, but he's going to help insulate your top players as time goes on, and just the type of player that you need in the lineup, and that makes it hard to play against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And the last player I wanted to highlight in terms of what Wes Clark had to say in the 3 draft picks in the first round last night, Will Horcoff. And he said the progression in his game, Will Horcoff's game, from the start of the year to the end of the year, from going to the program in Michigan, was immense. Super athletic at 6'5". We've seen that. Obviously there are some questions about his skating and maybe his quickness, but anyway, went on to say still very early in his development curve, and the mentorship and guidance that obviously he's got from his old man is a big benefit. Obviously his father, Sean Horcoff, who played for the Edmonton Oilers in the NHL, and he went on to say, Wes Clark, I think that will only go leaps and bounds for Billy there as he continues to develop, but love the upside there. So they do truly believe in their guys that they've selected in this year's NHL entry draft. We're going to have some more content on some of the other draft picks that they made in rounds 2. Obviously, it touched on Kittle a little bit in this video, and because the trade allowed them to draft that player. So pretty tidy work, at least in my estimation, in that move. And obviously we get some clarity on why they made the selections that they made in the first round last night. Some of them off the board. Fans are not necessarily happy about it, but they're now in the system. And we're going to break down and have some more comments and content on the rest of the Penguins draft picks from this draft. And of course, there's some moves coming. Brian Rust might be traded. There is a lot going on with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So if you haven't yet, let us know how you feel in the comments, what you think about all these moves and the draft picks so far in this year's draft. And obviously, heading into free agency on Tuesday. Let us know how you think and feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.